Get that little girl off my range before she hurts herself. The senior chief's voice cracked like thunder across Coronado. 23 Buds candidates laughed. Elena Mercer didn't flinch. She raised the M4, exhaled once, and put 30 rounds through the same hole at 300 meters. The laughter died. The range went silent. Then Colonel William Garrett stepped forward, a SEAL legend with 35 years of combat, and did something no one expected. He rolled up his own sleeve, revealing an identical tattoo, and he saluted her. "Shadow Viper," he said. "Welcome home, Ghost." Subscribe now and follow this story to the end. Comment your city below. Let me see how far this story travels. The sun hadn't cleared San Diego Bay, but Coronado was already bleeding testosterone. Senior Chief Marcus Stone stood at the edge of the grinder, the concrete courtyard where SEAL candidates either became warriors or broke into pieces. 22 years in the teams, 3 combat deployments. A silver star he never talked about. He'd seen everything this job could throw at a man. Or so he thought. "Stone." He turned. Commander Davis approached, tablet in hand, expression unreadable. "New consultant arriving today. DoD Center for Combat Psychology Assessment. Name's Mercer." "Her." Davis handed over the tablet. Stone looked at the photo. Looked again. "This a joke? Negative. She looks like she should be serving lattes, not observing SEAL training. Orders came from Warcom. Above my pay grade. Above yours, too." Stone handed back the tablet. "Fine, she can observe. From a distance. I'm not babysitting some Pentagon desk jockey while I've got candidates to break. Your call how you run it. Just don't create a diplomatic incident." Davis walked away. Stone turned back to the grinder where his candidates were finishing their morning warm-up. 23 young men who thought they wanted to be SEALs. By the end of Hell Week, maybe 8 would still believe that. The gate guard's voice crackled over the radio. "Senior Chief, your consultant just cleared the checkpoint. She's walking in now." Stone didn't bother responding. He watched the entrance instead. Elena Mercer appeared 30 seconds later. The first thing he noticed was how small she was. 5'4", maybe 120 pounds, soaking wet. Brown hair pulled back tight. A face that looked barely old enough to drink legally. She wore civilian tactical pants and a long-sleeve compression shirt despite the building July heat. The second thing he noticed was her eyes. They didn't match the rest of her. They were older somehow. Harder. The kind of eyes that had seen things most people only read about. But Stone had seen plenty of young professionals with practiced stares. It meant nothing. "Ms. Mercer." "Senior Chief Stone." Her voice was calm, controlled. No nervous energy, no eagerness to please. "You understand this is an observation role only. You watch. You take notes. You stay out of the way." "Understood." "Good. My candidates don't need distractions." Something flickered across her face. Not offense, something closer to amusement. "I'll try not to distract anyone." Stone gestured toward the grinder. "Hell Week starts in 4 hours. You can set up over there by the... Actually, I'd prefer to participate." Stone stopped mid-sentence. "Excuse me? Participate. In the training, it's difficult to assess combat psychology from a distance. I need to experience what the candidates experience." "Ma'am, with respect, this isn't a CrossFit class. Hell Week breaks professional athletes. It breaks Special Forces soldiers from other branches. It's broken men twice your size with 10 times your training." Elena's expression didn't change. "I understand." "Do you? Because the average candidate burns 10,000 calories a day during Hell Week. Sleeps maybe 4 hours total across 5.5 days. Half of them hallucinate by day 3. I'm aware of the statistics." "Then you're aware that what you're asking is impossible." Senior Chief. Her voice dropped slightly. Still calm, but with an edge now. I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you of my intention. My orders authorize full integration into training activities at my discretion. Stone's jaw tightened. He'd dealt with Pentagon observers before, desk jockeys who thought watching war movies qualified them to understand combat. But something about this one was different. Fine, he said finally. You want to participate, you participate. But when you ring that bell, and you will ring that bell, you do it quietly. No complaints, no excuses, no medical evacuations because you twisted an ankle. Are we clear? Crystal. Outstanding. Formations in 10 minutes. Try to keep up. He walked away, already dismissing her from his mind. She'd last 2 hours, maybe 3 if she was stubborn. By lunch, she'd be back in whatever air-conditioned office had spawned her writing reports about how mean the SEALs were. Behind him, Elena watched him go. Her hand moved unconsciously to her left forearm, pressing against the fabric of her sleeve, against the ink underneath that no one here knew about. Not yet. The grinder filled with candidates. 23 men ranging from 22 to 29 years old. Former college athletes, prior service Marines, a few civilians who'd spent years preparing for this moment. They stood in loose formation, nervous energy radiating off them like heat. When Elena took her place at the end of the formation, the whispers started immediately. Who's the girl? Some consultant. Pentagon sent her. She's doing Hell Week with us. No way she makes it past the first hour. A tall candidate with broad shoulders and a Texas drawl nudged his buddy. Tyler Webb. 24 years old former Army Ranger who'd reclassed to chase the Trident. Confident, bordering on arrogant. $20 says she cries before lunch. I'll take that bet, another candidate said. I give her 30 minutes. Elena heard every word. Her face showed nothing. Stone appeared at the front of the formation. Listen up. This is Elena Mercer, civilian consultant. She'll be participating in selected training events. You will treat her with the same respect you'd treat any candidate. He paused, letting the silence stretch. That means when she quits, and she will quit, you will not mock her. You will not laugh. You will maintain professionalism. Are we clear? Huya, Senior Chief? Outstanding. We're starting with the O-course warm-up. Full combat load, 20 pounds. Consultant, you're welcome to observe from, I'll run it with them. More whispers. A few poorly concealed laughs. Stone's expression flickered. Suit yourself. Formation, move out. The obstacle course at Coronado was legendary. Wooden walls, rope climbs, cargo nets, low crawls through sand. Each obstacle designed to find your weakness and exploit it. Candidates hit it like they were fighting for their lives. All aggression, all determination, all wasted strength. They slammed into walls, slipped off ropes, got tangled in cargo nets. Elena watched them struggle for the first few runs, observed their techniques, their mistakes. Then it was her turn. She stood at the start line for exactly 3 seconds, just looking, reading the course like it was a language she spoke fluently. Then she moved. Where they used strength, she used technique. Where they forced their way through, she found the path of least resistance. At the wall, she didn't jump for the top. She found handholds that seemed to appear under her fingers, placements that let her flow up the vertical surface like water rising. The rope climb was physics, not power. Feet locked in a J-hook configuration, using leg strength instead of burning out her arms. She was up and over in seconds, while candidates twice her size struggled halfway up. The low crawl was where she showed something different. She moved like smoke, finding the lowest path. Fast but controlled. efficient to the point of eerie. The candidates watched from the finish line. The laughing had stopped. Elena crossed at 4 minutes and 18 seconds. The display board showed the previous record 4 minutes and 41 seconds, set 2 years ago by a SEAL candidate who'd gone on to DevGru. She walked to the water station, took one long drink, didn't say a word. Stone stared at the board, then at Elena, then back at the board. "Lucky run," Webb muttered to his buddy. "Course is easier for smaller people. Lower center of gravity." But his voice had lost its certainty and sun. The afternoon brought surf torture. The Pacific Ocean in July was cold. Not hypothermia cold, but cold enough to make your muscles seize if you weren't careful. Cold enough to make your mind start lying to you about how much more you could take. Candidates lay in the surf zone, arms-linked waves crashing over them every few seconds. The water was 58 degrees. Not deadly, but brutal. Stone walked the line, watching for quitters. "The only easy day was yesterday," he called out. "If you can't handle a little cold water, you don't belong here. Ring the bell. Go home. Nobody will think less of you." 2 candidates broke. They stood up, walked to the brass bell near the grinder, and rang it 3 times each. The sound echoed across the beach like a funeral toll. Elena lay at the end of the line. Her body was shaking. Everyone's body was shaking, but her breathing was controlled. Steady. She'd adjusted her position so the waves hit her at an angle, reducing the impact. Such a small thing, but it showed understanding of principles that took most candidates weeks to figure out. Ryan Torres lay next to her, 22 years old, small for a SEAL candidate, 5'8", 160 pounds, but determined. He was struggling. His teeth chattered so hard Stone could hear it from 10 feet away. "Focus on your breathing," Elena said quietly, just loud enough for Torres to hear. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Your body can handle more than your mind thinks it can. Torres looked at her, managed to nod, tried the breathing pattern. His shaking didn't stop, but it slowed. Stone noticed the exchange, filed it away. 30 minutes later, the surf torture ended. 18 candidates remained. 5 had wrung out during the evolution. Torres was still there, looking half-drowned but alive. "Outstanding," Stone said. "Warm-up's over. Now we begin the real work." The candidates groaned internally. That had been a warm-up: combat water survival, pool, 20 minutes. They moved toward the combat training tank, a massive pool designed for drown-proofing and underwater skill development. Candidates would have their hands and feet bound, and would need to complete a series of tasks without panicking. Webb walked past Elena deliberately close. "Not bad for a consultant, but the pool's where the real SEALs separate from the tourists." Elena didn't respond, just kept walking. Webb smirked. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue? Or are you saving your breath for when you start drowning?" "Webb." Torres's voice was quiet but firm. "Leave her alone." "Oh, look, the consultant has a white knight. How cute." "She helped me in the surf. That's more than you did." Webb's smirk faded into something uglier. "Careful, Torres. You're not even through day 1. Plenty of time for accidents to happen." Elena stopped walking, turned slowly to face Webb. "Accidents don't happen to people who pay attention," she said. Her voice was soft, almost gentle, but something in it made Webb take a half-step backward without realizing it. "And I pay very close attention." She turned and kept walking toward the pool. Webb watched her go. For the first time, something other than contempt flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty. Combat water survival was designed to simulate drowning. Hands tied behind your back, feet bound together, dropped into the deep end. Complete a series of tasks, bob to the surface, float face down, retrieve a mask from the bottom without using your hands or feet. Most candidates panicked the first time. The human brain wasn't wired to be helpless in deep water. Every instinct screamed to thrash, to fight, to struggle against the bonds. The candidates who listened to those instincts usually rang out within an hour. Elena was the sixth person in the water. Stone watched as the instructors bound her hands and feet, watched as they positioned her at the edge of the pool, watched as she closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself. Go. She dropped into the water, and then she showed them something none of them expected. She didn't fight the water. She became part of it. Her body relaxed, completely conserving energy instead of wasting it on panic. She bobbed to the surface, using nothing but core muscle control and breath management, floated face down in perfect stillness. When it was time to retrieve the mask from the bottom, she used a technique that most SEALs didn't learn until advanced training, a dolphin kick combined with precise body positioning that sent her to the bottom like a torpedo. She surfaced with the mask in her teeth. Total time underwater, 47 seconds. Breathing unlabored. Expression unchanged. Outstanding, Stone said before he could stop himself. Elena climbed out of the pool. Water streamed off her compression shirt, and for a moment Stone saw something on her left forearm. Just a glimpse through the wet fabric. Black ink, a curved shape, part of something larger. Then she adjusted her sleeve, and the glimpse was gone. Where did you learn to do that? Stone asked. I've had training. What kind of training? Elena looked at him. Those old young eyes meeting his directly. The kind that doesn't show up on a resume. She walked away to join the other candidates who'd completed the evolution. Stone watched her go. The question that had been forming in his mind all day crystallized into something solid. Who are you really? Evening brought the first real meal since morning MREs eaten in the sand, salt air, mixing with the smell of processed food. Candidates sat in small groups, too exhausted for much conversation. Elena sat slightly apart, eating methodically, refueling rather than enjoying. Torres approached, hesitated, then sat down next to her. Mind if I ask you something? Go ahead. That breathing technique in the surf, where'd you learn it? Combat stress management, standard protocol for extended operations in hostile environments. That's not standard. I've been through BUDS prep for 2 years. Nobody taught me that. Elena glanced at him, assessed, made a decision. Box breathing. Navy SEALs use a 4-count version. But the original technique was developed for operators who needed to remain functional under extreme duress for extended periods. Days, not hours. The version I showed you is designed for hypothermic conditions specifically. And where does a civilian consultant learn that? Elena was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer, almost sad. From someone who saved my life by teaching me how to save myself. Torres wanted to ask more, but something in her expression stopped him. A wall going up, a door closing. Thank you, he said instead, for helping me out there. Watch, learn, adapt. That's how you survive this. That sounds like you've survived something like this before. Elena didn't answer. Just kept eating. but Torres noticed that her hand had moved to her sleeve again, pressing against whatever was hidden underneath. Night fell over Coronado. Hell Week officially began at sunset with a tradition as old as the SEAL program itself. The instructors unleashed chaos. Smoke grenades, artillery simulators, instructors screaming contradictory orders, hoses spraying ice water in every direction. Total sensory overload designed to simulate the confusion and fear of combat. Candidates ran in every direction. Some followed orders. Some froze. 2 more rang the bell within the first 30 minutes. Elena moved through the chaos like she'd been born in it. When smoke obscured her vision, she navigated by sound. When contradictory orders came, she identified the actual instructor and followed his commands while ignoring the harassment. When the ice water hit her, she adjusted her position to minimize exposure while maintaining her task. Stone watched her from the instructor platform, his expression increasingly troubled. This wasn't luck. This wasn't even exceptional athletic ability. This was training. Deep, ingrained, professional training. The kind of training that didn't come from civilian sources. "Who is she?" he murmured. The instructor next to him, a Master Chief named Rodriguez with 25 years in the teams, shook his head. "I've seen special operations soldiers from every branch wash out of this program. Delta guys, PJs, even a couple foreign special forces on exchange." "Your point?" "My point is that none of them moved like that, not on the first day. That girl moves like she's already been through something worse than Hell Week, something that made this look like a vacation." Stone pulled out his phone, scrolled to his contacts, found a name he rarely called. Commander Patricia Webb, Naval Special Warfare Command, Intelligence Liaison. "Pat, it's Marcus. I need a favor." "Stone, it's 2300. This better be good. I need you to run a deep background check on someone. DoD consultant assigned to my training evolution. Name's Elena Mercer." Silence on the other end. "Then, that name's flagged. Flagged how? Flagged as in, don't ask questions about this person. Flagged as in, her file requires clearance levels I don't have." Stone's grip tightened on the phone. "What are you telling me?" "I'm telling you that whoever Elena Mercer is, she's not a consultant. And whoever sent her to you wanted her there for a reason that's above both our pay grades. Who do I call to find out more? You don't. You watch. You wait. And if you're smart, you treat her with a lot more respect than I'm guessing you've shown so far." The line went dead. Stone stared at his phone, then looked back at the training area where Elena Mercer was helping a struggling candidate maintain formation during a log carry. 16 remaining candidates, 7 hours into Hell Week, 4 days to go, and somewhere in the middle of it all, a mystery wearing civilian clothes and hiding secrets behind eyes that were far too old for her face. Day 2 brought the boats, inflatable rubber crafts that weighed 180 pounds empty. Candidates carried them on their heads across soft sand, paddled them through pounding surf, raced them against each other until their arms felt like they were going to fall off. Elena was assigned to boat crew 5 Torres Webb and 3 others. 6 people who needed to function as a single unit to survive. Webb was already looking for weaknesses. "Listen up," he said during their first huddle. "The consultant's dead weight. Small, weak. She can't carry her share of the load. So Torres and I will pick up the slack. The rest of you, I'll carry my share." Webb turned. Elena was looking at him with that unreadable expression. "With respect, ma'am, you weigh, 120 pounds? The boat weighs 180. Basic math says, basic math doesn't account for technique. Position me at the center rear. Lower center of gravity provides stability. My contribution isn't lifting weight, it's distributing it efficiently across the crew. That's not how it works. It's exactly how it works. Sealboat crews have carried smaller members for decades. The key is optimization, not raw strength. Torres nodded slowly. She's right. I read about it in the prep materials. The strongest crews aren't the ones with the biggest guys. They're the ones who work together best. Webb's jaw tightened. Fine. But if we lose a race because of her, I'm making sure Stone knows who to blame. Blame whoever you want, Elena said. But we won't lose. The boat races began at dawn. 6 crews lined up at the water's edge, instructors screaming at them from every direction. The surf was rough 4-foot swells that would swamp boats if the crews weren't perfectly coordinated. Go! The crews rushed toward the water. Chaos erupted immediately. Boats collided. Crews fell out of rhythm. One boat flipped completely in the first wave. Boat Crew 5 moved differently. Elena called cadence. Short, sharp commands that synchronized their movements. Her voice cut through the chaos with an authority that didn't match her appearance. Paddle left, paddle right, dig, dig, brace for the wave, paddle through, hold, recover, go. They hit the first wave perfectly. While other crews were getting swamped, Crew 5 punched through the surf and started pulling for the buoy that marked the turnaround point. Torres couldn't believe what he was hearing. The commands weren't generic calls. They were specific tactical accounting for wave timing and crew fatigue and wind direction. The kind of coordination he'd only seen in veteran SEAL teams. They won the first race by 30 yards. Stone watched from the beach, expression unreadable. Again, he called. Winner stays out. Everyone else does push-ups. They ran 6 more races. 1-4. In the 2 they lost, they finished second by less than a boat length. By the end, Webb had stopped looking at Elena like she was dead weight. He was looking at her like he was trying to solve a puzzle that kept changing shape. Where did you learn that? He asked during the break. The paddle calls. That's not standard training. No, Elena agreed. It's not. So where? Elena looked at him. For a moment, something shifted behind her eyes. A door cracking open just slightly before closing again. Some things can't be taught in a classroom. They have to be learned the hard way, in real water, with real stakes. When failure means people don't come home. She walked away toward the water station. Webb watched her go, then turned to Torres. You believe her story that she's just a consultant? Torres shook his head slowly. I don't know what she is, but I know she's not just anything. Sunset on day 2. 13 candidates remaining. 10 had wrung out. 1 had been medically evacuated with a stress fracture. The survivors sat in the sand eating MREs with hands that shook from exhaustion. Elena sat with her crew silent, watching the sun sink toward the Pacific. Torres studied her profile. The way she held herself, even when exhausted, straight, spine-controlled, breathing eyes that constantly scanned her environment without seeming to move. You're not going to ring out, are you? Elena didn't look at him. No. You've done this before. Something like this. Maybe worse. Everyone has their own hell week. Mine just came earlier than most. How old were you? Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible above the surf. 19. Torres did the math. She was 25 now. That meant 6 years ago, when most people her age were worried about college exams, she was going through something that had prepared her for this. What happened when you were 19? Elena finally looked at him. Her eyes in the fading light were haunted. Ancient. Full of things that shouldn't fit in a 25-year-old face. I learned that some teachers pay for their lessons in blood, and some students survive by becoming something they never thought they could be. She touched her left forearm through the sleeve, a gesture that was becoming familiar. A ghost reaching for something only she could feel. Get some sleep, Torres. Tomorrow will be harder. She lay back in the sand and closed her eyes. But Torres noticed her hand stayed on her forearm, pressing against the ink underneath, holding on to something invisible. A secret, a scar, a story that was waiting to be told. Day 3 broke with renewed chaos. Only 12 candidates remained. The instructors had increased the pressure, pushing them toward the breaking point. Cold water, log carries, endless runs through soft sand. The human body wasn't designed for this kind of sustained stress. Neither was the human mind. Torres watched his classmates start to crack. Small things at first: irritability, confusion, forgetting simple instructions. The hallucinations would come soon. He'd read about them. Sleep deprivation mixed with physical exhaustion created waking dreams that felt more real than reality. But Elena didn't crack. She moved through day 3 with the same controlled efficiency she'd shown on day 1. Tired everyone was tired, but functional, coherent, present. It was unnatural. It was terrifying. It was exactly what Torres wanted to become. During a rare rest period, he approached her again. She was sitting apart from the others, eyes fixed on something in the distance. "How do you do it?" She didn't ask what he meant. Compartmentalization. The brain has limited processing power. If you waste it on fear, you have nothing left for function. So you don't feel fear, you don't feel pain, you don't feel anything until the mission is complete. Then, she paused. Then you pay the price. What price? The things you didn't let yourself feel during the mission don't disappear. They wait. And when you finally have time to feel them, they come all at once, like a wave you've been holding back with your bare hands. Torres absorbed this. You talk like someone who's been on missions, real missions, not training. Elena looked at him. Really looked like she was deciding something. There's a theory in combat psychology called stress inoculation. You expose people to controlled doses of stress to prepare them for uncontrolled doses later, like a vaccine. Okay? This, she gestured at the training around them, is controlled stress. Intense but controlled. Safety officers, medical teams, rules of engagement. The instructors want to break you, but they don't want to kill you. And uncontrolled stress. Elena's eyes went somewhere else, somewhere far away, somewhere dark. Uncontrolled stress is when the people trying to break you absolutely want to kill you. When there are no safety officers. When the only medical team is the one you brought with you and they're already dead. When the rules of engagement are survive or don't. She came back from wherever she'd gone, met his eyes again. This is hard, Torres, but it's not the hardest thing, not even close. Remember that when you think you can't go on. Whatever you're feeling right now is nothing compared to what's possible. And if you can survive this, you can survive that. Before Torres could respond, the instructor's whistles pierced the air. Feet, now. Log Pete. 20 minutes. Move. The candidates scrambled. Elena rose smoothly, no wasted motion, and fell into formation. Torres followed his mind churning. Who are you, he thought. What happened to you? What did you survive that made Hell Week look like nothing? The questions had no answers. Not yet. The phone call came at midnight. Stone was in his quarters reviewing candidate performance data when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Secure line prefix. He answered. Stone. Senior Chief Marcus Stone, 22 years in the teams, Silver Star for actions in Kandahar, 3 combat deployments, reputation for producing quality SEALs. The voice was male, older, commanding. Who is this? Someone who's been watching your training evolution with great interest, specifically your interest in a certain consultant. Stone's grip tightened on the phone. Mercer. You've been making inquiries, asking questions, trying to find out who she really is. That's my job. I need to know who's integrated into my training program. No, Senior Chief. Your job is to train candidates. Ms. Mercer's identity is not part of your job description. With respect, sir, whoever you are, I've got a woman in my program who moves like a Tier 1 operator, shoots like a sniper, and has classified files that people at Warcom can't access. That's my business. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, a low chuckle. You're protective of your candidates. Good. That's what makes you effective. Are you going to tell me who she is or not? I'm going to tell you something better. I'm going to tell you that tomorrow afternoon I'll be visiting your facility, and when I arrive, your questions will be answered. All of them. Who are you? Colonel William Garrett, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Commander Counterterrorism Operations. Stone's blood went cold. DevGru, SEAL Team 6, the most elite special operations unit in the United States military, and its commander was coming to Coronado. For her. Sir, Get some sleep, Senior Chief. You're going to want to be sharp tomorrow, because what you're about to learn will change how you see everything. The line went dead. Stone sat in the darkness, phone in hand, mind racing. Colonel William Garrett. A legend in the special operations community. A man whose classified service record would fill volumes. Coming to Hell Week to see a 25-year-old civilian consultant. Why? What was so important about Elena Mercer that it required the attention of one of the most powerful special operations commanders in the country? Stone didn't sleep that night. Neither did Elena. She stood alone on the beach, watching the waves roll in her hand pressed against the tattoo on her forearm. The tattoo that bore the mark of something called Shadow Viper. The tattoo that meant she'd been places most people couldn't imagine. Done things most people couldn't comprehend. Tomorrow the secret would come out. Tomorrow everything would change. She looked up at the stars, the same stars she'd learned to navigate by in deserts on the other side of the world. The same stars that had witnessed her worst moment and her finest hour. I kept the promise, Commander, she whispered to someone who wasn't there. I came back. I survived. And now I'm passing it on, just like you asked. The waves answered with their eternal rhythm. Somewhere in the barracks, Torres lay awake, thinking about compartmentalization and controlled stress, and a young woman with ancient eyes who moved through Hell Week like she'd already been through something worse. Somewhere else, Stone stared at his phone, waiting for dawn, waiting for answers, waiting to discover that the kindergarten teacher was something else entirely. And somewhere in the darkness between them all, the truth waited. Patient, inexorable, ready to shatter everything they thought they knew. Dawn came bloody and merciless over Coronado. Elena hadn't slept. 4 hours in 3 days. Her body screamed for rest, but her mind remained sharp. Compartmentalization, the technique she'd learned in places that didn't exist on any official map. Feel nothing until the mission is complete. The mission wasn't complete yet. 12 candidates remained, half the original class broken and scattered like shells on a beach. The survivors moved through morning formation with the glazed expressions of people who'd been pushed past normal human limits. Torres fell into position beside her. His eyes were bloodshot hands trembling slightly from exhaustion and cold. But he was still standing. Still fighting. "You didn't sleep," he said quietly. "Neither did you." "I tried. Kept seeing things. Shadows moving. People who weren't there." "Hypnagogic hallucinations. Normal at this stage of sleep deprivation. Your brain is trying to dream while you're awake." "How do you know that?" "I know a lot of things." Stone appeared at the front of the formation. His face was different today. Tighter. More alert. Something had changed overnight, but Elena couldn't identify what. "Listen up. Today's schedule has been modified. We'll be conducting live fire qualification this morning instead of afternoon. Full combat loadout. Standard M4 platform." Murmurs rippled through the candidates. Live fire during Hell Week was unusual. The exhaustion made everything more dangerous. Trembling hands impaired judgment, slowed reaction times. Stone's eyes found Elena's. Held them for a moment longer than necessary. "Move out to the range. 20 minutes." The candidates shuffled toward the armory. Elena hung back, watching Stone's body language, the way his shoulders were set, the slight tension in his jaw. He knows something, she thought. Or he's about to find out. She touched her forearm through her sleeve. The ink underneath seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Soon. The range was already set up when they arrived. M4 carbines laid out on tables. Magazines loaded with standard 5.56 NATO. Targets positioned at distances ranging from 25 to 300 meters. Stone walked the line, inspecting each candidate's weapon handling. Most of them could barely keep their eyes open, let alone maintain proper trigger discipline. Qualification standard is 80% accuracy at 100 meters. Combat effective groupings. You fail, you recycle to the next class. Webb stepped up to the first firing position. Former Army Ranger. Decent shooter on a good day. Today was not a good day. His hands shook as he raised the rifle. First shot went wide right. Second shot went low. By the fifth round, he was grouping somewhere in the general vicinity of the target, but nowhere near qualification standard. 72%, Stone announced. Marginal pass. Next. One by one, the candidates moved through. Sleep deprivation destroyed their accuracy. Most barely qualified. 2 failed outright and were pulled from the line for remedial training. Then, it was Elena's turn. She walked to the firing position, picked up the M4, and then she did something none of them had done. She inspected it, not the quick press check they'd all learned, real inspection. She dropped the magazine, locked the bolt back visually, and physically confirmed the chamber was clear. Checked the bore for obstructions. Tested the trigger pull. Reloaded. Charged. Applied safety. The sequence took maybe 15 seconds, but every movement was deliberate, practiced to the point of muscle memory. Stone watched with narrowed eyes. Elena moved to the firing line, adjusted her stance by millimeters. Her support hand shifted forward on the handguard, in a position that most people ignored, but that modern special operations doctrine emphasized. "Ready on the left?" the range safety officer called. "Ready on the right. Ready on the firing line. Shooters, you may fire when ready." Elena's first shot broke the silence. Center, mass. Perfect. Second shot. Same hole. Third shot. The target now had one ragged opening where the center mass used to be. She didn't stop at 5 rounds. She emptied the magazine. 30 rounds. Every single one through the same expanding hole in the center of the target. The range went completely silent. "Target," Stone said, his voice strange. The RSO retrieved it, held it up for everyone to see. 1 hole, 30 rounds, at 100 meters, after 3 days of Hell Week with almost no sleep. "That's not possible," Webb breathed. Elena safed the weapon, locked the bolt back, grounded it, stepped away. "Explain the shot," Stone said. His voice had lost all pretense of casual authority. This was a direct demand. Elena looked at him, then at the candidates. When she spoke, her voice was level, calm, the tone of someone stating facts that didn't need emphasis. "M4 carbine, 14.5-inch barrel, 5.56 NATO M855 ammunition. Muzzle velocity 970 feet per second. At 100 meters bullet drop is approximately 1.2 inches negligible for center mass targeting." She paused. "Current wind is 8 miles per hour from the northwest. That adds approximately 1.8 inches of drift right. I compensated by holding left edge of center mass. Trigger pull on this weapon is approximately 5.9 pounds. I felt the break point at 5.6. Controlled the surprise. Maintained follow-through for 0.3 seconds after each shot broke." Nobody moved. "Standard technique," she finished. "Nothing special." Torres was writing in a small notebook he'd pulled from his cargo pocket. Every word, every number. His hands had stopped shaking. Stone stepped closer to Elena, close enough that his voice wouldn't carry beyond her. "That's not consultant shooting. That's not competitive shooting. That's not any kind of shooting I've seen outside of TAG or DevGru. I told you, I've had training. What kind of training produces that at your age after 3 days of sleep deprivation?" Elena met his eyes. The kind that doesn't give you a choice about whether you learn it or not. Before Stone could respond, his radio crackled. "Senior Chief, you have a visitor at the main gate. Colonel William Garrett, DevGru." Stone's face went pale. He looked at Elena. She looked back. Something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of it. "Continue qualification," Stone said to the RSO. "I need to handle something." He walked toward the gate. Elena watched him go. Behind her, Torres appeared at her shoulder. "Who's Colonel Garrett? Someone who's going to answer a lot of questions." "About you." Elena touched her forearm. "About what I was before I became a consultant." "And what was that?" She didn't answer, just turned and walked toward the water station, leaving Torres with his notebook and his questions, and the growing certainty that everything was about to change. The morning dragged toward noon. Stone didn't return to the range. The candidates completed their qualification, most of them barely scraping by, still shaken by what they'd witnessed from Elena. Webb approached her during the water break. His attitude had shifted. No more mockery. No more condescension. Something closer to wariness. "That shooting. Where did you really learn it? Does it matter? It matters to me. I spent 4 years in the Rangers. I've trained with the best shooters in the Army. None of them could do what you just did." "Then maybe your definition of best needs expanding." Webb's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to understand." "No. You're trying to categorize. Put me in a box you can recognize. Consultant, college athlete, lucky civilian. But I don't fit in any of those boxes, and that bothers you." "So, which box do you fit in?" Elena looked at him for a long moment. "The one marked classified." She walked away. Webb watched her go, frustration and fascination warring in his expression. Torres caught up with her near the barracks. "Something's happening. Stone's been gone for 2 hours. The instructors are acting weird. I overheard Rodriguez say something about a colonel coming to observe the final exercise. Yes. You know what's going on. I know what's about to happen. Are you going to tell me? Elena stopped walking, turned to face him fully. Her expression was different now, softer, almost sad. Torres, you've been asking questions since day one. Good questions. The kind that show you're thinking, not just reacting. That's rare. That's valuable. But some questions have answers that change everything. Once you know certain things, you can't unknow them. Are you sure you want that? I want to understand who's teaching me. Fair enough. Then watch what happens next. And when it's over, you'll have your answers. She touched his shoulder briefly, the first physical contact she'd initiated with anyone, and walked toward the grinder. Torres stood there. Pulse racing, mind spinning. What happens next? He didn't have to wait long to find out. The candidates were assembled in the grinder at 1400 hours. Full formation. Dress right dress. The afternoon sun beat down on them, adding heat exhaustion to their existing misery. Stone stood at the front. His expression was carved from granite. Whatever had happened during his absence had affected him deeply. At ease, he said. Listen up. We have a visitor today. Some of you may recognize the name. Colonel William Garrett, Commander Naval Special Warfare Development Group. A ripple went through the formation. DevGru, SEAL Team 6, the pinnacle of special operations, the unit that took down bin Laden, the most elite warriors on the planet, and their commander was here, was at Hell Week. To see them, or to see someone among them. Colonel Garrett will be observing the remainder of Hell Week and the final exercise. You will conduct yourselves with professionalism. You will not embarrass this command. Are we clear? Hooyah, Senior Chief. Outstanding. Formation attention. They snapped to attention as a figure approached from the command building. Colonel William Garrett walked across the grinder like he owned it. Because in every way that mattered, he did. 62 years old. Silver hair cut to regulation. Ramrod posture that spoke of 4 decades in uniform. His eyes were the color of North Atlantic ice, and just as cold. He didn't look at Stone, didn't acknowledge the formation, just walked directly to a position 40 yards from where Elena stood in the back row, and stopped. His gaze locked onto her like a targeting laser. Elena felt the weight of that stare. 30 years of combat experience, countless classified operations, a man who had seen and done things that would never appear in any history book, studying her like she was a specimen he was trying to verify. She didn't look away. The silence stretched. 10 seconds. 20. The candidates barely breathed. Then Garrett moved, walked forward, directly toward Elena. His boots struck the concrete with measured precision, each step deliberate, purposeful. He stopped 3 feet from her, close enough to speak without shouting, far enough to maintain military formality. Roll up your left sleeve. 5 words, not a request, a command. The kind of command that expected immediate compliance. The formation collectively held its breath. Elena hesitated. Just 1 second. A flicker of something in her eyes, resignation, perhaps, or acceptance that this moment had always been coming. Then she reached down and began rolling up the sleeve of her compression shirt. The fabric pulled back inch by inch. The tattoo revealed itself like a secret being forced into daylight. A serpent. Black ink faded slightly by time, but still sharp in execution. Coiled around a combat knife, The snake's body wrapped the blade from guard to tip. Its head was raised, fangs bared, ready to strike. Professional work. Military precision. The kind of tattoo that wasn't decoration. It was documentation. Garrett leaned closer. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but in the absolute silence of the grinder it carried like thunder. Shadow Viper mark. Class of 2019. Stone's face drained of color. Rodriguez physically stepped backward. The candidates looked confused. Shadow Viper meant nothing to them. But the senior NCOs exchanged glances loaded with meaning. With fear. Garrett straightened, turned to face the formation. His voice now carried across the entire grinder, clear, authoritative, leaving no room for doubt. You've been mocking someone who completed missions most of you will never be cleared to read about. He let that sink in. That mark isn't ink. It's a receipt. Paid in blood and silence. Webb's face went ash white. Shadow Viper Program, 2015 to 2022. CIA and JSOC Joint Operation. Deep penetration. Zero footprint. If you were compromised, you were on your own. No extraction, no support, no acknowledgement that you ever existed. Garrett's eyes swept the formation. 43 operators went through that program over 7 years. 12 came out alive. The woman you've been calling consultant is one of them. 12 out of 43. The math hit them like ice water. A 72% casualty rate. Worse than any conventional combat unit. Worse than most special operations programs. Torres did the mental calculation. Elena was 25 now. If she'd been in the 2019 class, she would have been 19 when she went through. 19 years old in a program that killed almost 3/4 of its participants. Where did you earn it? Garrett asked Elena directly. Her voice was steady. No pride, no shame, just fact. Syria, Raqqa Province, March 2020. More mental math, 2020. She would have been 20 years old, in Syria, during some of the most intense fighting of the entire conflict. Team composition, 6 operators, 2 survivors. Garrett nodded slowly. Something flickered across his face, not quite emotion, but an acknowledgement of shared experience. Shared loss. Who was your team leader? Elena's voice changed slightly. Softer. Heavier. Commander Sarah Chen. The name meant nothing to the candidates. But Garrett's reaction told them it meant everything. His jaw tightened. His eyes went distant for a moment, seeing something that wasn't there. Chen was the best insertion specialist I ever worked with, he said quietly. She trained half the operators in DevGru. I didn't know she'd gone to Shadow Viper. She didn't talk about it. None of us did. And she's dead. Yes, sir. She gave her life to extract me from an ambush, used her body as a shield when the grenade came through the door. Silence. The kind of silence that has weight, that presses down on everyone present and forces them to reckon with things they'd rather not think about. Garrett turned back to the formation. You've spent 3 days watching this woman outperform you in every evolution. You've wondered how. You've doubted. You've mocked. His voice hardened. Now you know. She earned the right to be here in ways you can't imagine. In places that don't exist on any map. Against enemies that never officially existed either. He pointed at Elena's tattoo, still visible on her forearm. That mark means she survived something that killed most of the people who attempted it. It means she was trusted with missions so sensitive that even I don't have full access to her file. It means that when the United States needed someone to go where no one else could go and do what no one else could do, They sent her. Garrett looked at Stone. Senior Chief, do you have any questions about the qualifications of your consultant? Stone's voice was hoarse. No, sir. Outstanding. Garrett turned back to Elena. Roll down your sleeve, operator. You've proven enough for one day. Elena complied. The tattoo disappeared back under the fabric. But nothing else could be hidden now. The secret was out. The whisper had been spoken. And everything was different. Garrett addressed the formation one final time. Training resumes in 30 minutes. Use this time to reconsider everything you thought you knew about capability and appearance. The most dangerous people in the world rarely look the part. That's what makes them dangerous. He walked away. Didn't wait for salutes. Didn't look back. Just crossed the grinder and disappeared into the command building like a ghost dissolving into shadow. The formation stood frozen. Stone's voice cracked out, but it lacked its usual force. Dismissed for water break. 30 minutes. Fall out. They scattered, but nobody went far. They clustered in small groups, voices, hushed eyes constantly finding Elena and then looking away. Torres approached her slowly. His notebook was still in his hand, but he'd stopped writing. Some things couldn't be captured in notes. 20 years old, he said. You were 20 years old in Syria. Yes. Younger than me. And you've already... He stopped. Couldn't find words for what he wanted to say. Already what? Already been through hell. Real hell. Not this. He gestured at the grinder at the training facilities, at all the controlled suffering they'd experienced over the past 3 days. This is just practice. You've been through the real thing. Elena looked at him with those ancient eyes. This is practice for keeping people alive. I went through the real thing so I could come back and teach others how to survive it. That's the point, Torres. That's always been the point. We don't survive just to survive. We survive so we can pass it on. Is that why you're here, to pass it on? Elena's hand moved to the compass hanging around her neck. The compass that had belonged to Commander Chen. The compass that pointed north, always north, toward home. My team leader's last words to me were, "Get home. That's an order. And when you do teach them what I taught you." She met Torres's eyes. I'm keeping my promise. Webb appeared at the edge of their conversation. His face had changed completely. No more arrogance, no more condescension. Just a man coming to terms with how badly he'd misjudged someone. I owe you an apology, he said stiffly. I was out of line. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to know. That's the point of classified operations. Still, I mocked you, called you deadweight, and you are... He struggled for words. I'm just someone who survived, Elena said. That doesn't make me special. It makes me lucky. Lucky and obligated. Obligated to what? To make sure the people who died for me didn't die for nothing. She walked away from both of them, toward the edge of the grinder, toward a quiet corner where she could be alone with her memories and her ghosts. Torres watched her go. Webb stood beside him, both of them processing what they'd just learned. She's the real thing, Webb said quietly. Not just a good shooter. Not just tough. The real thing. Yeah. Torres looked down at his notebook, at all the observations he'd made, the techniques, the numbers, the lessons. She's been teaching us since the moment she got here. We just didn't know it. Teaching us what? Torres thought about everything he'd seen, everything he'd learned, the breathing techniques, the movement patterns, the shooting principles, the way she'd helped him in the surf, the way she'd never raised her voice, never bragged, never sought recognition. How to be quiet, he said finally. How to be capable without being loud about it. How to prove yourself through action instead of words. Silent proof. Exactly. They stood there in the California sun, watching the small figure at the edge of the grinder, processing the revelation that had just shattered everything they thought they knew. Tomorrow would bring the final exercise, the ultimate test. And somewhere in the middle of it, they'd learn whether 3 days of training from a Shadow Viper operator had been enough to make them into something more than they'd been before. But that was tomorrow. Today, they had questions without answers, and answers that raised more questions. They had a mystery solved, and a deeper mystery just beginning. They had a young woman with ancient eyes and a tattoo that meant she'd survived something worse than death. And they had 30 minutes before training resumed. Not enough time to understand everything, but maybe enough time to start. The 30 minutes passed like water through fingers. When Stone called them back to formation, something fundamental had shifted. The candidates no longer clustered in their comfortable groups. They positioned themselves differently now, closer to Elena, watching her movements, trying to learn from the way she stood, the way she breathed, the way her eyes never stopped scanning. Stone noticed. He'd spent 22 years reading body language, and what he saw told him everything. These men had found something they'd been searching for without knowing it. A standard. A benchmark. A living example of what quiet competence actually looked like. Final exercise briefing, Stone announced. Conference room, 10 minutes. They moved as a unit now. Not the ragged shuffle of exhausted candidates, but something approaching coordination. Elena walked among them, not leading, not following, just present. Torres stayed close to her left. Webb surprisingly took position on her right. The conference room was sparse. Folding chairs, a projection screen, maps on the walls. The candidates filed in and sat. Elena took a seat at the back, but every eye in the room kept finding her. Stone stood at the front. Garrett had joined him, standing slightly to the side with arms crossed, and that ice-water gaze sweeping the room. Listen carefully, Stone began. Tomorrow at 0400, you will be inserted into the mountain training area. 72-hour survival and evasion exercise. Your objective is simple: reach the extraction point without being captured or killed. He clicked a remote. A topographical map appeared on screen. The insertion point is here. The extraction point is here. 30 kilometers of rough terrain. You'll be hunted by an opposing force of veteran SEAL operators. They know the terrain. They have vehicles, communications, and thermal imaging. You have what you're carrying, and whatever you've learned in the past 4 days. Murmurs rippled through the candidates. Rules of engagement: simunition only. Hits to torso or head count as kills. 3 limb hits equal 1 kill. If you're killed, you sit where you fall until the exercise ends. No rescue. No second chances. He paused. Let the weight settle. Ms. Mercer will accompany you as an observer and advisor. She can guide. She can teach. She cannot fight for you. This is your test, not hers. Torres raised his hand. Senior Chief, what's the pass rate for this exercise historically? 60% make it to extraction. 40% fail. And what happens if we fail? You recycle to the next class. Start the entire program over from day 1. The stakes crystallized. 4 days of suffering. 72 hours of additional hell. And a 40% chance of having to do it all again. Garrett stepped forward. His voice cut through the tension like a blade. I've watched this exercise conducted dozens of times. The candidates who succeed aren't the strongest or the fastest. They're the ones who think, who adapt, who work together instead of competing with each other. His eyes found Elena's. You have access to someone who's survived worse than anything this exercise can throw at you. I suggest you use that resource wisely." He walked out without another word. Stone clicked off the projector. "Get some sleep. You'll need it. Formation at 3-3. Dismissed." The candidates filed out slowly, minds churning with possibilities and fears. Torres lingered, waiting for Elena to rise. "Can we talk?" he asked. "About what? About how to survive tomorrow." Elena looked at him, at the notebook still clutched in his hand, at the determination burning beneath his exhaustion. "Follow me." She led him to a quiet corner outside the barracks. The evening air carried salt from the bay. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of waves marked time. "Ask your questions." Torres opened his notebook. "The opposing force has thermal imaging. How do we hide from that?" "You don't hide from thermal. You confuse it. Move along water sources, the temperature differential masks your signature. Use terrain features that retain heat from the day. Travel during transitions dawn and dusk, when the thermal gradient is most chaotic." "What about movement formations?" "Standard doctrine says spread out to minimize casualties from single engagements. That's wrong for this scenario. You're not a military unit with fire support and medevac. You're prey. Prey moves in tight groups for mutual protection and combined awareness. One person's blind spot is another person's field of view." Torres wrote furiously. "What's the biggest mistake candidates make? They treat it like a race. They see 30 kilometers and think cover distance. That's wrong. It's not about distance. It's about not being found. A team that moves slowly and carefully will beat a team that moves fast and careless every time." "What if we're engaged, if they find us?" Elena's expression shifted. Something darker moved behind her eyes. "If they find you, you have two options: break contact, retreat, and evade or fight through. The choice depends on terrain numbers and how badly you've been compromised. Sometimes running is survival. Sometimes running is death. You have to read the situation and decide in seconds." "How do you read it that fast? Practice, experience, intuition built from thousands of smaller decisions. You won't have that yet, so you rely on principles. If they have the advantage, break contact. If you have the advantage, exploit it. If neither side has the advantage, create one." Torres looked up from his notebook. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. Simple doesn't mean easy." Footsteps approached. Webb appeared from the shadows, looking uncomfortable. "Mind if I join?" Torres glanced at Elena. She nodded slightly. Webb sat down across from them. The arrogance that had defined him 4 days ago was gone. In its place was something more useful: humility. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier. About proving yourself through action instead of words." He looked at Elena directly. "I spent 4 years in the Rangers talking about how good I was, bragging about my qualifications, putting down anyone who didn't measure up to my standards. And you've been here 4 days, never said a word about what you'd done, and you've accomplished more than I have in my entire career." He swallowed hard. "I want to learn. Teach me how to be like you." Elena studied him for a long moment, reading him, assessing. "You can't be like me. My path isn't your path. But you can be better than you are now. That's what matters." "How? Stop thinking about yourself. Start thinking about your team. The Rangers taught you to be a warrior. That's not enough. You need to be a leader. Leaders don't prove their value through personal excellence. They prove it by making everyone around them better." Webb absorbed this. "Tomorrow, the exercise. How do I help the team? Watch the ones who are struggling, not to judge them, to support them. When someone falls behind, don't leave them. When someone makes a mistake, don't criticize. Correct and move on. The team that survives together succeeds together. Torres was still writing. Webb was still listening. And somewhere in that quiet corner, something was being built. Not just knowledge. Trust. The foundation of every successful team since the beginning of human cooperation. Night deepened around them. Elena looked up at the stars, the same stars she'd navigated by in Syria, in places whose names she couldn't speak aloud. The same stars that had witnessed her worst moments and her small triumphs. "Get some sleep," she said finally. "Both of you. Tomorrow will test everything you've learned, and a lot of things you haven't." "Aren't you going to sleep?" Torres asked. "I don't sleep much, not anymore." "Because of what happened in Syria." Elena's hand moved to the compass around her neck. The brass was warm from her body heat. "The things you see in certain places stay with you. They don't go away just because you close your eyes. Sometimes sleep is more exhausting than staying awake." She stood, looked down at them with something that might have been affection. "You're both going to be fine. You've learned more in 4 days than most people learn in 4 years. Trust your training. Trust each other. Trust yourselves." She walked away into the darkness. Torres and Webb sat in silence for a moment. "She's incredible," Webb said quietly. "She's broken," Torres replied. "Did you see her eyes when she talked about Syria? She's incredible and broken at the same time. That's what surviving does to people." "You think we'll be like that someday?" Torres looked at his notebook, at all the lessons he'd captured, at the wisdom of someone who'd paid for knowledge in blood. "I think that's the price, and I think she's trying to teach us how to pay it without losing ourselves." They went to their bunks. Tomorrow would come, whether they were ready or not. The trucks rolled out at 04:15. 12 candidates. 1 observer. 3 days of hunting and being hunted. The stakes were everything they'd worked for. Elena sat near the tailgate, watching the candidates' faces. Some showed fear. Some showed determination. Most showed a mixture of both. Torres sat across from her. His notebook was secured in a waterproof pouch on his chest rig. Webb sat beside him. The former ranger had positioned himself not at the front, not at the back, but in the middle, where he could see everyone and help anyone who needed it. The truck stopped. Stone's voice came over the radio. "Insertion point. 30 seconds. Good luck." They dismounted into darkness. The mountain terrain stretched before them, invisible threats in every shadow, death waiting behind every ridgeline. Elena gathered them in a tight circle. Her voice was barely a whisper. "The opposing force will expect you to head directly toward extraction. That's the shortest route. It's also the most predictable. We're going to take a different path." "Which path?" Torres asked. "The difficult one. Through the canyon system to the west. It adds 8 kilometers, but it gives us terrain advantage. The OP-4 vehicles can't follow us there. We'll be invisible." Webb nodded. "I know that canyon. Trained there 2 years ago. It's rough terrain, but defensible." "Exactly. You take point. Torres, your navigation. Everyone else stay tight. No talking unless absolutely necessary. Hand signals only." They moved out. The first 3 hours went smoothly. Webb led them through terrain that would have stopped a vehicle and slowed most infantry to a crawl. Elena guided from the rear, occasionally tapping shoulders to adjust positioning or pointing out potential threats before they became actual ones. The candidates were learning, adapting, becoming something more than they'd been. Dawn broke over the mountains. They'd covered 9 kilometers, 21 remaining, 52 hours left. Then the first shot cracked through the morning air. A candidate named Martinez grabbed his shoulder. Orange paint bloomed across his uniform. "Contact left," Webb shouted. Chaos erupted. Some candidates dove for cover. Others froze. 2 tried to return fire without identifying the target. Elena's voice cut through the panic like a surgeon's scalpel. "Cease fire! Break contact! Fall back to the ravine! Now!" They ran. Not gracefully, not professionally, but they ran. More shots cracked behind them. Another candidate went down Peterson, a former Marine who'd been struggling since day 2. 8 remaining. 2 killed in the first engagement. They reached the ravine, collapsed against the rocky walls. Breathing hard. Pulse racing. Fear written across every face. Elena appeared among them, not breathing hard, not afraid, just calm, controlled. "What went wrong?" Webb spoke first. "I didn't see them. They were positioned above us, using the ridge for cover. I walked us right into their kill zone." "What should you have done differently? Scouted the high ground before committing to the route. Never let the enemy have the terrain advantage." "Good. Learn it. Don't forget it." Torres raised his hand. "How did they find us? We were careful." "You were careful by training standards. They were careful by operational standards. There's a difference. The OPA-4 has done this dozens of times. They know the terrain. They know the likely routes, including the unpredictable ones. They were waiting because they knew eventually someone would try exactly what we tried." "So what do we do now?" Elena pulled out a map, pointed to their current position. "They expect us to continue west. That's the logical response. Keep moving toward the objective, avoid the contact zone. We're not going to do that." "What are we going to do?" Elena looked at each of them in turn. 8 exhausted, scared, determined faces. 8 people who were learning what it meant to survive under pressure. "We're going to do something they won't expect." She told them the plan. Their eyes widened. Some started to object. She raised a hand and they fell silent. "I know it's risky. I know it sounds insane. But predictable gets you killed. We need to be unpredictable. Are you with me?" Torres nodded first, then Webb. One by one, the others followed. "Good. Move out in 5 minutes. And remember, the team that thinks together survives together." They moved. The next 12 hours were the longest of their lives. Elena's plan was audacious. Instead of continuing toward the extraction point, they circled back, retraced their steps, found the OPA-4 position that had ambushed them, and set up their own ambush. 3 hours of waiting. Absolute silence, muscles cramping, insects crawling, the sun beating down. Then the OPA-4 team appeared. 4 veteran operators moving through the terrain, searching for the candidates they assumed were still running. Torres gave the signal. 8 weapons opened fire simultaneously. The OPA-4 team went down in seconds. Orange paint covering their tactical vests. The team leader, a Master Chief with 30 years of experience, stood up slowly, looked at the candidates who'd just ambushed him, started laughing. "Well played. Didn't see that coming." Webb stepped forward. "Thank you, Master Chief." "Don't thank me. Thank whoever taught you to think like that." His eyes found Elena in the shadows. "That was your idea, wasn't it?" "It was a team decision." "Sure it was." He shook his head, still smiling. "There are 2 more OPA-4 elements between you and extraction. They know what happened here. We radioed it in. They'll be ready for you." "We'll be ready for them." The Master Chief nodded. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Good luck, candidates. You're going to need it." He walked away with his team. The candidates stood in the aftermath of their first victory. First blood. First proof that they could be hunters as well as prey. Torres turned to Elena. That was incredible. We actually beat them. You beat them. I just suggested the tactic. You executed it. But you knew they'd come back through. You knew they'd underestimate us. I knew they'd be predictable. Experienced operators often are. They've been doing this so long they forget that unconventional solutions exist. You used that against them. Webb was grinning for the first time in days. We're actually going to make it. We can do this. Elena's expression didn't change. We've covered 12 kilometers, 18 to go. 2 more OPFOR teams waiting. 46 hours remaining. Don't celebrate yet. The grin faded. Reality reasserted itself. Move out. We've given away our position. We need distance before they reorganize. They moved. The second day brought new challenges. One candidate, Reynolds, the youngest of the group, started hallucinating. Sleep deprivation combined with physical exhaustion had pushed his brain past its limits. He kept seeing things that weren't there, hearing voices that didn't exist. Elena recognized the signs immediately. Torres, Webb, flank him, keep him moving, talk to him constantly, don't let him drift. Is he going to be okay? Torres asked. He'll be fine once he sleeps, but that won't happen until we reach extraction. Until then, keep him grounded, keep him connected to reality. They took turns, walking beside Reynolds, talking to him about anything and everything. Family, sports, food, anything to keep his mind anchored. Reynolds stumbled through the terrain supported by teammates who refused to leave him behind. That was the lesson. The real lesson. Not tactics, not marksmanship, not physical endurance. The team survives together or not at all. Hour 62, 8 kilometers from extraction. The second OPFOR team found them. This time the candidates were ready. They'd been reading terrain like Elena taught them. They'd spotted the likely ambush position. They'd prepared a response. When the shots came, they executed a flanking maneuver that caught the OPFOR off guard. 2 candidates took hits wounded, not killed, but they drove the hunters back and created an opening. 6 candidates remaining. 6 kilometers to go. 10 hours left. Elena moved among them, checking wounds, assessing readiness. Torres's arm had been grazed a flesh wound that hurt, but didn't impair function. Webb had taken a round to the thigh. He was limping, but refused to slow down. We're close, Elena said. 1 more OP4 element. They'll be waiting at the extraction point. The final defense. How do we get through? Torres asked. Together. She told them the plan, the final plan, the one that would determine everything. 6 hours later, they executed it. Webb led a diversionary team, drew the OPFOR's attention with noise and movement, made them think the main force was coming from the north. Torres led the actual assault, from the south. Through terrain the OPFOR thought was impassable. Elena guided them through the impossible terrain, showed them handholds that shouldn't exist, paths that shouldn't work, gave them every trick she'd learned in places far more dangerous than California mountains. The final assault lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, the OPFOR commander, a senior chief with combat experience in 3 theaters, stood among the orange paint splattered across his team and shook his head. You actually did it. You crazy bastards actually did it. Torres checked his watch. 13:47 hours. 13 minutes ahead of schedule. The extraction point was theirs. Stone's voice came over the radio. Extraction confirmed. Well done, candidates. Transport arriving in 20 minutes. 6 exhausted, wounded, triumphant people stood in that clearing. 52 hours of hunting and being hunted. 30 kilometers of rough terrain. 3 OPFOR teams neutralized. They'd done it. Torres looked at Elena. Tears were streaming down his face, cutting tracks through the dirt and camouflage paint. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." Elena touched his shoulder briefly, that small gesture of connection that meant more than words. "You did the work. You made the decisions. You survived. That's on you, not me. But you showed us how. That's what survivors do. We pass it on." Webb limped over. His face was a mask of exhaustion and triumph. "I owe you an apology for everything I said when you first arrived. I was an arrogant fool." "You were, but you learned. That's what matters. Will we see you again? After this?" Elena looked out at the mountains, at the terrain they'd conquered together, at the crucible that had forged something new from raw material. "Probably not. I don't stay anywhere long. Old habits." "Where will you go?" "Somewhere quiet, where I can teach without all this." She gestured at the tactical gear, the weapons, the military apparatus surrounding them. "There are other ways to pass on what I've learned." The transport arrived. They loaded up. 6 survivors, 1 observer, a bond forged in fire that would last the rest of their lives. As the truck rolled toward Coronado Torres, sat across from Elena, one last time. "That thing you said earlier, about survivors paying a price, about broken and incredible being the same thing." He paused. "Is it worth it?" Elena thought about the question. Really thought. "Ask me again in 30 years. If I'm still standing. If I've passed on enough to make the losses mean something, then I'll tell you if it was worth it. And if you're not still standing, then it won't matter what I think." The truck rolled on. The mountains faded behind them, and somewhere in the space between question and answer, a truth waited. Some prices can only be paid in blood. Some lessons can only be learned through loss. And some people survive not because they're lucky, but because they refuse to let the dead die for nothing. Elena touched the compass around her neck. Chen's compass. The compass that always pointed north, toward home, toward peace, toward whatever came next. The truck rolled through the gates of Coronado at 1500 hours. 6 survivors. 6 people who'd walked into hell and walked out the other side. They dismounted slowly, bodies screaming from 72 hours of sustained combat stress. But their eyes were different now. Harder. Clearer. The eyes of people who'd discovered something about themselves they hadn't known before. Stone stood waiting. His expression had changed since the beginning of Hell Week. The skepticism was gone. In its place was something that looked almost like respect. "Outstanding work," he said. "All of you. Hit the showers. Chow at 1800. Graduation ceremony at 2000. The candidates moved toward the barracks, slow, exhausted, triumphant. Elena hung back. Stone approached her. A word, of course. They walked to a quiet area near the command building. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the concrete. "What you did out there," Stone began, "that wasn't observation. That was leadership. I guided. They led themselves. Don't be modest. I've been running Hell Week for 8 years. I've never seen a class perform like that. Never seen candidates adapt that quickly, think that clearly work together that effectively. They had good instincts. I just helped them trust those instincts." Stone shook his head. "It's more than that. You changed them. In 4 days you turned a group of individuals into a team. That's not training. That's transformation." Elena looked at him. Really looked. Saw the career warrior beneath the hard exterior. The man who'd dedicated his life to creating better soldiers, better people. You do the same thing every cycle. Break them down. Build them up. Show them what they're capable of becoming. I break them down. You showed them how to rebuild themselves. There's a difference. Silence stretched between them. Two professionals recognizing something in each other. Respect earned through observed competence. Colonel Garrett wants to see you, Stone said finally. Command building, before the ceremony. I expected he would. Whatever happens next, I want you to know it was an honor having you here. If you ever want to come back, the door is open. Elena extended her hand. Stone shook it firmly. Thank you, Senior Chief, for giving me the chance to keep a promise. She walked toward the command building. Stone watched her go, then turned and headed for the barracks where 6 survivors were learning what hot water and clean clothes felt like after 3 days in the wilderness. Colonel Garrett's office was sparse. Military minimalism. A desk, 2 chairs, a wall of commendations and photographs that told the story of a career spent in the shadows. Elena knocked once. Enter. She stepped inside. Garrett sat behind his desk studying a file folder that she recognized. Her file. The classified one. The one that documented things that officially never happened. Close the door, she complied. Garrett looked up. Those ice-water eyes studied her with an intensity that would have broken most people. Sit. She sat. I've been reading your operational history. Syria, Yemen, Somalia. Places that don't show up on news reports. Missions that don't appear in any congressional briefing. Yes, sir. 12 kills confirmed. Estimated actual total significantly higher. 3 field promotions. 2 Purple Hearts that were never officially awarded because the operations that earned them never officially occurred. Elena said nothing. There was nothing to say. You could have had any posting you wanted. DevGru would have taken you in a heartbeat. CIA offered you a permanent position in their Special Activities Division. Instead, you walked away, became a civilian. Why? Elena's hand moved to the compass around her neck. The gesture was unconscious, automatic. Commander Chen's final orders. Tell me. Elena closed her eyes. The memories were always there waiting, always ready to surface at the slightest invitation. The mission in Raqqa went wrong from the beginning. Bad intel. Compromised insertion. By hour 3, we'd lost 2 operators and were pinned down in a compound surrounded by ISIS fighters. She opened her eyes, looked directly at Garrett. Commander Chen was wounded. Shrapnel in her abdomen. She couldn't move, but she could still command. She organized our defense, coordinated our fire, kept us alive for 18 hours until extraction could reach us. And then, the extraction got compromised too. They were taking fire before they even landed. Chen made a decision. She ordered me to carry the intelligence we'd recovered, the whole reason for the mission, and make for the secondary extraction point, alone. She stayed behind. She stayed behind, with 2 other operators who were too wounded to move. She said she'd buy me time. Elena's voice cracked slightly, the only sign of emotion she'd shown. The last thing she said to me was, "Get home, Ghost. That's an order. And when you do teach them what I taught you, the quiet ones survive. Remember that." And she died buying you that time. She died killing 17 enemy combatants and destroying the compound when they finally breached the perimeter. She triggered her own explosives rather than be captured. The blast killed everyone within 50 meters. Garrett was silent for a long moment, processing, honoring. Commander Sarah Chen, he said finally. I knew her. Trained with her at Dam Neck in '08. She was the best insertion specialist I ever worked with. Quiet. Professional. Absolutely lethal when she needed to be. She was my mentor. My teacher. The closest thing to a mother I had after I lost my own. And that's why you came here, to keep her promise. Yes, sir. She wanted me to pass it on. The knowledge, the mindset, the understanding that quiet competence beats loud aggression every time. I couldn't do that from inside the system. Too many rules, too many restrictions. So I became a civilian, a consultant, someone who could move between worlds without belonging to any of them. Garrett leaned back in his chair, studied her with new understanding. You've been doing this for 6 years, appearing at training facilities, teaching without anyone knowing who you really are, then disappearing before anyone can ask too many questions. Yes, sir. How many programs have you visited? 17. SEAL training, Delta selection, Ranger School, Marine Raiders, Air Force PJs, even some allied programs, British SAS, Australian SASR, wherever I could make a difference without revealing too much. And no one ever connected the dots, realized the same woman was appearing at classified training programs around the world. A few people suspected. Most didn't want to know. The results spoke for themselves. Graduation rates improved. Casualty rates in subsequent deployments dropped. That was enough for the people who mattered. Garrett nodded slowly. Until now. Until you came here, and I recognized that tattoo. Until now. So what happens next? Elena met his eyes. That depends on you, sir. You could expose me, report my activities to people who would shut down everything I've built. Or you could let me continue. Let me keep the promise I made to Commander Chen. There's a third option, which is you could stop hiding, stop moving in shadows, come into the light and do this officially, with support, with resources, with the full backing of naval special warfare. Elena's expression shifted. Surprise flickered across her features. You're offering me a position. I'm offering you a purpose, a permanent one. No more drifting from program to program. No more secrets. You'd be recognized for what you are, one of the most effective combat instructors this country has ever produced. And what about the things I've done, the missions that never happened, the people I've killed in places that don't officially exist? Those stay buried. As far as the official record is concerned, you're exactly what your cover says, a DoD consultant with exceptional qualifications. The rest is classified, beyond anyone's need to know. Elena sat in silence, processing, weighing. Can I have time to think about it? The offer stands indefinitely. Take as long as you need. But I hope you'll consider it seriously. People like you are rare. The ability to survive what you've survived and then turn around and help others survive, that's not something that can be trained. It's something you're born with, or you're not. Commander Chen wasn't born with it. She built it through experience, through failure, through loss. And then she passed it to you. Now you're passing it to others. That's how legacies work. That's how we honor the dead, by making sure their knowledge doesn't die with them. Elena's hand tightened on the compass. Chen's compass. The last physical connection to the woman who'd saved her life and shaped her soul. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. She stood, started toward the door, stopped. Sir, yes. Thank you for understanding, for not treating me like a threat or a liability, for seeing past the cover to what's underneath. I see a warrior who's found a way to keep fighting even after she left the battlefield. That deserves respect, not suspicion. Elena nodded once, opened the door, stepped through. Behind her, Garrett looked at the file folder on his desk. at the classified history of a woman who should have died a dozen times, but kept surviving, kept fighting, kept teaching. Commander Chen had chosen well. Her legacy was in good hands. The graduation ceremony began at 2000 hours. The grinder had been transformed. Chairs arranged in neat rows, a podium at the front, flags flanking the stage, families filled the seats. Parents, siblings, spouses who'd waited and worried through Hell Week without knowing if their loved ones would make it. 6 survivors sat in the front row. Clean uniforms, fresh haircuts, eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. Torres sat at the end of the row. His family was somewhere in the crowd. His mother, his father, his younger sister, who'd driven all the way from Arizona to see this moment. He'd spotted them during the processional. His mother had been crying. His father had been standing straighter than Torres had ever seen him stand. Webb sat beside him, the former ranger who'd learned humility the hard way. His parents hadn't come some family drama Torres didn't fully understand, but he didn't seem to mind. The team was his family now. The bond forged in the mountains was stronger than blood. Reynolds sat in the middle, still looking slightly dazed. The hallucinations had faded, but the memory of them lingered. He'd learned something about his own limits, about how far the human mind could be pushed before it started breaking down. He'd also learned that teammates could hold you together when you couldn't hold yourself. The other 3, Martinez Chen, no relation to Commander Chen, just a coincidence of names that had made Elena pause the first time she heard it, and Kowalski filled out the row. Each carrying their own stories, their own lessons, their own transformations. Stone stood at the podium. Behind him, Garrett sat with the other senior officers, and in the back of the assembled crowd, barely visible in the shadows, Elena watched. Ladies and gentlemen, Stone began. Family and friends, we're gathered here to recognize the achievements of Buds Class 342. These 6 individuals have completed one of the most demanding military training programs in the world. They've proven themselves physically, mentally, and spiritually. They've earned the right to call themselves SEAL candidates. Applause rippled through the crowd. Torres's mother was crying again. But tonight I want to talk about something different. Something that happened during this class that I've never seen before in 8 years of running this program. The crowd quieted. Attention sharpened. 4 days ago, a civilian consultant arrived at this facility. Her name is Elena Mercer. On paper, she was here to observe and assess our training methodology. In reality, she was something else entirely. Stone looked toward the back of the crowd. Found Elena in the shadows. Ms. Mercer is a veteran of classified operations that I'm not authorized to discuss. She carries experience that most people can't imagine, and scars that most people can't see. And in 4 days, she transformed this class from a group of individuals into a team. He paused. Let the weight settle. The final exercise for this class had a historical pass rate of 60%. This class passed with 100% of surviving candidates reaching the extraction point. They didn't just survive, they adapted, improvised, and overcame in ways that exceeded every expectation. More applause. Louder now. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because someone shows you what's possible. Someone demonstrates that limits are negotiable, that fear is manageable, that the human spirit is capable of far more than we typically ask of it. Stone looked at Elena again. Ms. Mercer, would you join us at the podium? Elena hesitated. This wasn't what she'd expected. Public recognition was the opposite of everything she'd built her life around. Shadows, silence, moving without being seen. But Torres was looking at her. Webb was looking at her. All 6 survivors were looking at her with expressions that said, "Please." She walked forward, through the crowd, past the families, up to the podium where Stone waited. The applause followed her like a wave. Stone stepped aside. Elena stood at the podium looking out at the faces, the families who'd worried, the candidates who'd suffered, the officers who'd doubted. "I'm not good at speeches," she said. "I'm better at doing than talking. But there's something I want to say to this class, something I want you to remember long after tonight is over." She found Torres's eyes, then Webb's, then each of the others in turn. "You didn't succeed because of me. You succeeded because you chose to. When everything was falling apart, when your bodies were breaking down and your minds were lying to you about what you could handle, you chose to keep going. That choice is the only thing that separates the people who make it from the people who don't." She paused, gathered herself. "Someone taught me that lesson a long time ago. She paid for it with her life, and she asked me to pass it on. So here it is. The quiet ones survive. Not because they're stronger or faster or smarter, because they don't waste energy on things that don't matter. They focus on what's essential. They trust their training. They trust their teammates, and they keep moving forward even when every part of them wants to stop." Elena's hand moved to the compass around her neck. "This compass belonged to my mentor, Commander Sarah Chen. She died in a place that doesn't exist on any map, doing a mission that will never be acknowledged, saving my life, so I could be here tonight. Everything I've taught you came from her. The credit belongs to her, not me." Torres was crying. He didn't try to hide it. "Be the quiet ones," Elena said. "Be the ones who prove themselves through action, not words. Be the ones who lift up their teammates instead of climbing over them. Be the ones who survive and then pass on what you've learned so others can survive too." She stepped back from the podium. The applause that followed was different from before, deeper, more meaningful. The kind of applause that recognizes truth when it hears it. Stone returned to the podium, called each candidate forward one by one, handed them their certificates, shook their hands. When Torres's turn came, he paused after accepting his certificate. "Ma'am," he said to Elena, "I'll never forget what you taught us. I'll pass it on. I promise. I know you will. That's why I showed you." Webb came next. The transformation in his face was remarkable. The arrogance gone, the humility genuine. "Thank you," he said simply, "for showing me what I needed to become. You did the work. The credit is yours." One by one they passed. 6 survivors. 6 new warriors. 6 carriers of knowledge that would ripple outward through their careers, their teams, their students, legacy spreading like circles on water. After the ceremony, the families swarmed the graduates. Hugs, tears, photographs. The particular chaos of joy that follows, survived ordeal. Elena slipped away. She'd done what she came to do. Time to disappear again. Time to find the next place where her knowledge could make a difference. She was almost to the parking lot when a voice stopped her. "Ms. Mercer, wait." Torres jogged toward her. His family followed at a distance, giving him space. "I wanted you to meet them. My parents, my sister. They should know who really trained me. They know who trained you. Stone, the instructors, the program. They know the official version. I want them to know the truth." Elena looked at the family waiting in the distance. A mother still wiping tears. A father standing proud. A younger sister bouncing with excitement. "Torres, your family doesn't need to know about classified programs and shadow operations. They need to know that their son and brother survived. That's enough. But you deserve recognition. I don't deserve anything. I'm just keeping a promise. She touched his shoulder. Go be with your family. Celebrate what you've accomplished. Tomorrow starts a new chapter. Tonight is for them. Torres hesitated. Wanted to say more. Couldn't find the words. Will I ever see you again? Probably not. But you'll carry what I taught you. And someday you'll teach someone else. That's how it works. That's how we honor the dead. She turned. Walked toward her truck. Didn't look back. Torres watched her go, then returned to his family, to their hugs and their tears and their pride. But part of him stayed in that parking lot watching a shadow disappear into the California night. Elena drove toward the main gate. The guard waved her through without checking ID. He knew her truck now. Knew her face. Knew that she was someone who belonged here, even if he didn't understand exactly why. She passed through the gate. Out of the military world. Back into the civilian one. Her phone buzzed. Text from Garrett. From, "The offer stands. Whenever you're ready." She didn't respond. Not yet. The decision was too big, too important to make in the emotional aftermath of graduation. Instead, she drove north, toward the highway that led away from Coronado, toward whatever came next. The compass hung warm against her chest. Chen's compass. Still pointing north. Still pointing home. "I kept the promise, Commander," she whispered to the ghost that traveled with her. "I taught them what you taught me. The quiet ones survive." The night swallowed her taillights. The city fell away behind her. And somewhere in the darkness between where she'd been and where she was going, the future waited. Patient. Unknown. Full of promises yet to be made and kept. Elena drove on. 6 months later, the mountains of Montana welcomed Elena home. She'd found a small town called Clearwater, population 3,200, 1 high school, 1 diner, 1 church. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers were noticed immediately. Elena had been noticed. Then accepted. Then slowly embraced. She taught psychology at Clearwater High School, room 204, 3rd floor. A classroom filled with teenagers who had no idea that their teacher had killed more people than they'd met in their entire lives. That was fine. That was the point. "Ms. Mercer," Elena looked up from her desk. Sarah Thompson, 17 and president of the debate team, stood in the doorway. Nervous energy radiated off her like heat. "What is it, Sarah? The principal wants to see you. He said it's urgent." Elena's instincts flickered. Urgent wasn't a word used lightly in Clearwater. In this town, urgent meant a broken water main or a bear sighting near the elementary school. "Thank you, Sarah. Tell him I'm on my way." She gathered her things, locked the classroom, walked through halls filled with the particular chaos of a high school between periods. Principal Morrison's office was at the end of the main corridor. He was waiting outside, which was unusual. His face was pale, which was more unusual. "Elena, thank you for coming so quickly." "What's wrong?" "There's someone here to see you. He says he's a former student." Morrison paused. "He's wearing a military uniform, a lot of medals. He asked specifically for you by name." Elena's heart rate spiked. Former student could mean only one thing. "Where is he?" "Conference room B." She walked. Fast. Not running, but close. The conference room door was closed. She opened it without knocking. Ryan Torres stood inside. He was different. Older. Harder. The baby fat of his early 20s had been replaced by the lean muscle of an operator in peak condition. His dress uniform bore the insignia of a Navy lieutenant. His chest carried ribbons that told the story of deployments she could only guess at. But his eyes were the same intensity, the same intelligence, the same hunger for understanding that had made him stand out from the first day at Coronado. "Torres." "Ms. Mercer," he smiled, a real smile, the kind that came from genuine joy. "Or should I say Elena?" "How did you find me? I have friends in intelligence. It wasn't easy, but I was motivated." She stepped closer, studied his face, read the lines that hadn't been there before, the shadows behind his eyes that spoke of things seen and done. "You've deployed 3 times, Syria, Yemen, one I can't talk about. And I survived. My team survived, because of what you taught me." The words hit her like a physical force. 6 months of normal life. 6 months of pretending she was just a psychology teacher in a small Montana town. And now this. Proof that the lessons had taken root. That Chen's legacy was spreading. "How many?" she asked quietly. 12. 12 lives saved, because I remembered what you said about thinking instead of reacting. About the team surviving together or not at all. Torres reached into his pocket, pulled out a small leather case. "I brought you something." He opened it. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a Navy Achievement Medal. "This was awarded to me after our last deployment, for actions that saved my team during an ambush that should have killed all of us." He paused. "It belongs to you." "I didn't earn that." "You earned it more than I did. Everything I did in that ambush, every decision I made came from what you taught me in Coronado. The quiet ones survive. Think, adapt, never quit. Trust your team." He held out the case. "Please, take it." Elena looked at the medal, at the recognition of valor that had been earned in her name with her knowledge because of her teaching. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. "Torres, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. I wanted you to see that the promise you made to Commander Chen, it wasn't just words. It became real. In the mountains of Yemen, in firefights that lasted hours, in moments when everything was falling apart, and the only thing that kept us alive was the knowledge you passed down." Elena's eyes burned. She hadn't cried in years, hadn't allowed herself the luxury of tears. But now, standing in a conference room in a small Montana town, holding a medal that proved her mentor's sacrifice had meant something. The tears came. Torres stepped forward, wrapped his arms around her, held her while 6 years of grief and guilt and determination finally found release. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for being the person Commander Chen knew you could be." They stood there for a long moment. Teacher and student. Survivor and survivor. 2 people bound by shared knowledge and shared purpose. Finally, Elena stepped back, wiped her eyes, regained control. "How long are you in town?" "Just today. I have to report back to Virginia tomorrow, but I wanted to see you first, to show you that it worked." "It worked. It more than worked. The guys I trained with, they're all passing it on too. Webb became an instructor at Coronado. He's teaching the quiet ones survive to every class that comes through. Reynolds went to DevGru. Martinez is training Special Operations Forces in Colombia. The knowledge you gave us, it's spreading." Elena thought about circles on water, about ripples that started small and grew until they touched shores you couldn't see from where the stone fell. Commander Chen would be proud, she said. She'd be proud of you. You kept your promise. Elena touched the compass around her neck, still warm, still pointing north. I kept one promise. There are others still waiting. What do you mean? She looked at him, at the man he'd become, the warrior, the leader, the carrier of knowledge that would ripple outward through generations of operators yet to come. Colonel Garrett offered me a position. 6 months ago, after the graduation ceremony, he wanted me to stop hiding, to do this officially, with support, with resources. And I said I needed time to think. Have you decided? Elena walked to the window, looked out at the Montana mountains, at the peaceful life she'd built, at the students who had no idea what she'd been before she came here. I thought I wanted normal. After everything I'd been through, I thought peace was the answer. Quiet, anonymity, a place where my past couldn't follow me. But the past always follows you. The question isn't whether you carry it, you always will. The question is what you do with it, whether you let it bury you or whether you use it to build something. She turned back to Torres. I think I'm ready to stop hiding. His face lit up. You're going to take Garrett's offer. I'm going to call him tonight. Tell him yes. That's incredible. The training command could use someone like you, someone who's been there, someone who knows what it really costs. I'm not doing it for the training command. I'm doing it for Commander Chen, for the promise I made, for the knowledge that needs to keep spreading. Torres nodded slowly, understanding, honoring. She'd be proud, he said again. So proud. I hope so. I'll never know for sure, but I can keep trying to be worthy of what she gave me. They talked for another hour. About his deployments, about Webb and Reynolds and the others from Class 342, about the ways the lessons had evolved as they passed from person to person, adapting to new contexts, new challenges, new threats. When it was time for Torres to leave, they stood in the school parking lot. 2 warriors saying goodbye. 2 carriers of flame passing in the daylight before continuing on their separate paths. Will I see you again? Torres asked. If you end up in Virginia, probably. Garrett's offer involves the East Coast training facilities. I'll look for you. You'll find me. You're good at that. He laughed. The same laugh she remembered from Coronado, but deeper now. More seasoned. Take care of yourself, Elena. You too, Torres. Keep surviving. Keep passing it on. He climbed into his rental car, drove away, disappeared down the mountain road that led to the highway that led to the rest of his life. Elena stood in the parking lot, holding the metal case, watching until his taillights vanished. Then she went back inside to finish her day. That evening, Elena sat in her small cabin at the edge of town. The phone was in her hand. Garrett's number was on the screen. She pressed call. He answered on the second ring. Mercer, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. I'm ready. Silence. Then, ready for what exactly? Ready to stop hiding. Ready to do this officially. Ready to keep the promise in a way that matters. You've been keeping the promise for 6 years. What changed? Elena looked at the metal case on her kitchen table, at the compass hanging around her neck, at the photograph she kept on her nightstand, 6 people in desert camouflage, taken in a safe house in Raqqa the night before the mission that killed 4 of them. Someone came to show me that it's working, that the knowledge is spreading, that Commander Chen's sacrifice wasn't wasted. Torres, how did you know? I keep track of all Shadow Viper alumni. Torres has been asking about you for months. I figured he'd find you eventually. You could have told me. Some things need to happen on their own timeline. This was one of them. Elena almost smiled. You're manipulative, Colonel. I prefer strategically patient. When can you start? I need 2 weeks to close things out here. Say goodbye to people. Transition my classes. 2 weeks works. Report to Dam Neck on the 15th. We'll have your clearances reactivated and a full briefing ready. What exactly will I be doing? Whatever you want. Training, curriculum development, field consultation. You've earned the right to write your own job description. I want to train directly, in person, the way I did at Coronado. Done. And I want to be honest about who I am. No more covers, no more consultant pretense. Let them know they're learning from a shadow viper. Garrett was quiet for a moment. That's a significant change. The program's existence is still classified. The program is classified. My existence isn't. Let them know that the woman teaching them has actually been there, actually done the things she's talking about. It matters. You're right. It does matter. I'll make it happen. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Elena, for coming back, for choosing to keep fighting. I never stopped fighting. I just changed battlefields. And now you're changing back. Now I'm going where I'm needed most. She ended the call, sat in the silence of her cabin, let the decision settle into her bones. 2 weeks. Then a new life, a new purpose, a new way of keeping the promise that had defined her existence for 6 years. She picked up the photograph from her nightstand, looked at the faces. Commander Chen in the center, smiling that rare smile she only showed when she was truly happy. The others arranged around her the family they'd built in the shadows. I'm going back in, Commander, she said to the photograph. Not to fight. To teach. To make sure what you gave me keeps spreading. She could almost hear Chen's voice, that quiet, measured tone that had guided her through so many impossible situations. Good. That's good, Ghost. But remember, you don't have to save everyone. You just have to give them the tools to save themselves. I remember. And one more thing. Yes, live, not just survive. Live. You've earned that. We all wanted that for you. Elena's eyes burned again, but this time she didn't fight the tears. She let them come. Let herself feel the grief and the gratitude and the complicated love that bound her to a woman who'd been dead for 6 years, but had never really left. I'm trying, she whispered. I'm trying. The photograph didn't answer, but the compass seemed to pulse against her chest. Warm, steady, still pointing north, still pointing home. 3 weeks later, Elena stood before a new class. Dam Neck, Virginia. The Naval Special Warfare Development Group Training Facility. The place where the best of the best came to become even better. 30 operators sat before her. Young, hungry, confident. The same confidence she'd seen in Webb before Coronado taught him humility. She'd teach them too. My name is Elena Mercer. Some of you may have heard rumors about me. Some of those rumors are true. Others aren't. What matters is this. I'm here to teach you things that aren't in any manual. Lessons that I learned in places that don't exist on any map you've seen. She pulled up her sleeve, showed them the tattoo. The black viper coiled around the combat knife. This mark means I survived something that killed most of the people who attempted it. It means I've been where you're going. It means I know what it costs to make it back. 30 pairs of eyes locked onto the ink, onto her, onto the promise it represented. Over the next 6 weeks, I'm going to show you how to survive. Not by being stronger or faster or braver, by being smarter. By thinking when everyone else is panicking. By adapting when the plan falls apart. By trusting your teammates when you can't trust anything else. She let her sleeve fall back down. Some of you will hate this training. Some of you will think I'm too hard, too demanding, too focused on things that don't seem important. That's fine. Hate me all you want. But when you're in a firefight in some god-forsaken corner of the world and everything is going wrong, and the only thing standing between you and death is what you learned in this room, you'll understand. She looked at each of them in turn, seeing past the confidence to the uncertainty underneath, the fear they were all hiding, the questions they were afraid to ask. The quiet ones survive. That's the first lesson, the most important lesson. Everything else builds on that foundation. She picked up a marker, wrote 3 words on the whiteboard behind her. Think, adapt, survive. We start tomorrow at 0500. Get some sleep. You're going to need it. She dismissed them, watched them file out, some whispering, some silent, all of them processing, adjusting their expectations, preparing for whatever came next. When the room was empty, Elena stood alone with the whiteboard and the 3 words and the weight of everything they represented. 6 years since Commander Chen died. 6 years of keeping a promise. And now finally, a home. A purpose. A way of honoring the dead that didn't require her to keep running. She touched the compass through her shirt. I did it, Commander. I found a place where I belong, where the knowledge can keep spreading, where your sacrifice keeps meaning something. The compass pulsed warm against her fingers. Good ghost. Good. Elena almost smiled. Then she gathered her things and walked out of the classroom, ready for tomorrow, ready for whatever came after that, ready for the rest of her life. Outside, the Virginia evening was cool and clear. Stars were beginning to appear. The same stars she'd navigated by in Syria. The same stars that had witnessed her worst moment and her gradual healing. A car was waiting in the parking lot. Torres leaned against it, grinning. First day go well. You're supposed to be deployed. Got leave. Figured I'd come see the beginning of the next chapter. Elena walked over, stood beside him, looked up at the stars. Thank you, she said, for finding me, for showing me that it was time to stop hiding. Thank you for being someone worth finding. They stood in comfortable silence, teacher and student, survivor and survivor. 2 people bound by knowledge and purpose, and the shared understanding that some things were bigger than any individual life. So what happens now? Torres asked. Now I teach, for real, for as long as they'll let me. And then, Elena thought about the question, about all the years that might lie ahead, about all the students she might reach, about the ripples that might spread from this moment to shores she couldn't imagine. Then someone else takes over. That's how it works. That's how legacies survive. The quiet ones survive. Always. Torres pushed off from the car. I should let you get some rest. Big day tomorrow. Torres. Yeah, keep passing it on. Keep spreading what I taught you. That's how we honor the dead. That's how we make their sacrifices mean something. I will. I promise. He drove away. Elena watched until his taillights disappeared. Then she walked to her own car, started the engine, and headed toward the small apartment she'd rented near the base. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to keep the promise she'd made in a burning compound in Syria while Commander Chen's body shielded her from a grenade. But tonight she allowed herself one small moment of peace. One moment to feel the compass against her chest. One moment to remember the faces of the dead. One moment to acknowledge that she'd made it, that she'd survived, that she'd found a way to turn loss into legacy and pain into purpose. The quiet ones survive. Elena Mercer was proof, and tomorrow she would start proving it all over again, because that's what survivors do. They keep going. They keep teaching. They keep the promises that matter most. Silent proof. The only proof that ever mattered.